Um, and I think that leads us quite nicely into Moon Knight episode 6.
Yeah.
So it's quite funny. My dad isn't caught up on Moon Knight.
Okay.
He's watched the first 3 episodes.
Don't say you just then watch the finale.
No.
Okay.
He needs to catch up. But it's so funny hearing him talk about what he's seen, because I realised how quickly we went right.
Okay, yeah.
Like, episode 3 is a different fucking world.
Yeah, it just switches very quickly.
Yeah. So, I think we should address our concerns and that from last week, and then we'll explain how we feel now. What do you reckon?
Mm-hmm.
So, our concerns were, we decided there are 3 stories they needed to finish up. They needed to finish up Steven's story after killing him. They needed to get Jake's story wrapping up. And they obviously needed to finish off the main conflict of the series, which was Armit attempting to be released.
Yeah.
We were worried that 3 things to do in what had mostly been 50 minutes to hour-long episodes was a big task.
Yeah, big task to do correctly.
Yeah.
And how we envisioned it.
Yeah. And then the news broke, I think it was on the Saturday, and I think it was a tweet, that apparently it was going to be like a 45-minute episode, by far the shortest finale of any Marvel show. And we both instantly went, that task has just been made so much harder.
I think at that point I knew what was going to happen regarding wrapping everything up. And I was just like, well, we'll see.
I knew what was going to get cut, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
What I will say is the way they did it probably still has it as one of the better Marvel finales.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, and you know how bad I am for recency bias, as does anyone who regularly listens. I admit it, I'm horrific for recency bias. Which probably means that I might in the future end up disliking this episode. But as of right now, I do like it.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a couple of things they did that really irked me. One thing was stealing the fight scenes. So there was 2 fight scenes I felt like we got stolen. When Harrow turns up at like the pyramid, and he walks in, and all the other gods come out, and we look like we're about to get Harrow versus like 7 different avatars, and then it just cuts away, and we come back to them all being beat the fuck up. It feels like they filmed that fight scene and then they left it on the cutting room floor for some reason. But when if the episode was already an hour long with that stuff cut out, okay. But when it's that much shorter of an episode compared to everything else and you've cut that out, I find myself going, it wasn't needed. And I know there is a story reason for it, and the story reason makes sense. Doesn't mean I have to like it. Stealing the Jake Lockley taking over and beating the crap out of everyone and ending all of the combat for the episode is fucking shite.
Yeah, I'm
not saying it doesn't make sense for the story, because it does, I get that. And it sets up whatever they want to do, I'm sure. But fuck me, if that doesn't just take all of the fizzle out of the moment and make you go, oh, then I don't know what's the point.
I think it probably hasn't annoyed me as much as it annoyed you, but I knew watching that episode, I was like, they've not introduced Jake. This is gonna annoy Connor. It's gonna annoy Connor. And I knew by the point that the fight was happening, the big I thought the fight was epic. The fact that the gods were fighting in the background.
Oh, it's so fucking cool.
It was so well done, like digitally and VFX and everything.
The change in between Mark and Steven so beautifully and fluidly. Like the throwing the baton and it bounces around. And then when it gets caught, it's so cool. And it's almost like they got all through that, and then they were like, and cut, cool, no more fight. And they're like, but wait, the fight isn't over. It's like, don't worry about it.
I think, I'm kind of, yes, it would have been cool to then see Jake fight. I don't there was no way they could ever show Jake do that fight and it feel right, in my opinion, because we had no, like, yes, we've had teasers of him, but like, still up until that fight, there was no like understanding that they didn't realize there's a third one yet, and I feel like it would have been too jarring to just suddenly have Jake thrown at us like that. So
I do get exactly what you're saying.
they kind of pinholed themselves into that issue of we want to still keep, we want to tease Jake again, and they clearly wanted to like wrap up the episode with him being revealed. That's obviously where they wanted to end it so they could set up a season 2. So then it's like, how in this episode do we tease him another time so people don't forget about it and don't get caught up in everything else going on? And they obviously just decided, well, the best way is like he's the one that saves them in the fight, to make them go, okay, that really was neither of us two. We need to figure that out at some point.
So what else I will say is this episode created some interesting things looking retroactively. It's also left me with a couple of problems. So the one thing very retroactively that I think is now different, in the first episode, in that town square where Stephen wakes up to all the knocked out and battered bodies around him, that was Jake, not Mark.
Yeah, which I think we've said we thought that was the case.
Well, it could be, but there was never any way to know for sure if it was Mark or Jake who took over and saved him there. The similarities between the way he woke up there and the way he woke up at the end of the 6th episode shows that that was the same person who took over. But it also now makes zero sense in my mind as to why Jake asked out the girl from the museum when Jake is clearly a very servant to Khonshu.
Well, it's never. We've presumed it's Jake.
That's because it makes no sense for it to have been Mark.
It doesn't.
I think they make equally little sense. It feels like they kind of went, this would be a cool way to like show nice and early on that he doesn't know everything that's going on, but they never really paid it off with a who did it. So unless they've got a fourth personality they're deciding they're bringing in just for the MCU, who's going to be some kind of ladies man, it makes very little sense.
It's one of those where like we don't know, because we don't know. It's kind of, I don't know, it's just me, but it doesn't really bother me too much because I kind of just see it as like a weird outlier.
Yeah, you're far too easygoing with this.
Yeah,
right? We need answers. Get Kevin on the phone.
But I like, yes, Jake's reckless, but it doesn't mean he can't, because obviously Jake in this seems to be Spanish.
No, I think he's just talking Spanish. If they made Jake Spanish, we're in big trouble.
When I first told it, I thought he was speaking Italian.
Now that I would have been okay with.
Was my like,
because he's supposed to be like a New Yorker, so like Italian heritage could work. Or like supposed Italian heritage.
Well, it's like I thought the way he was dressed as well. I was like, this is very like mobster looking.
Yeah, I love that they finally had Khonshu in the suit as well. Khonshu in the suit is drippy as fuck.
You don't like. He could very easily have asked that girl, like, because he's like crazy psycho on one side doesn't mean he's not like a bit of a ladies' man.
He just seems a bit too loyal to Khonshu to be getting caught up. And also, I feel like Khonshu is actively trying to keep Jake a secret. So why would he, bearing in mind Khonshu knows what he's up to, why would he allow Jake to do something that could alert Stephen or Mark to his presence? I just think it's a slip up.
I think it's one of those things where like you've kind of just got to overlook it because it added to the story progression. And
yeah,
while it's a bit muddy as to who was the one that asked her out, I think it's fine in the sense that it added what was needed at the time to help kind of lay the ground for what was going on. I also don't So I kind of agree with the idea that Khonshu is trying to hide Jake. I think it's more like he's unintentionally found out about Jake, and obviously, like he manipulates Mark, so he just makes him think he's lost his powers. But he's like, well, I know there's a third one that those two haven't. I don't know if he's necessarily trying to hide it. He's just like, well, they haven't discovered him, so I'm not going to tell them, sort of thing.
I think, and maybe this is my, again, I wouldn't say it's extensive. Maybe this is my bit more knowledge of the way Khonshu behaves in the comics and the way he's been depicted so far in the show. He is enough of a dick to actively try and keep them from finding that out, as long as it benefits him.
Yeah. I just wonder if it's more like
it makes it interesting, but
I think
I just
it's what it needed, because there was obviously that kind of question at the end of, oh well, what about his powers? How are they going to bring him back to having powers? And then it's like, well, it's all just a ruse.
what I will say is Layla becoming the Avatar of Tourette, getting her powers and her suit was fucking awesome.
That was so well done, and
so fucking cool.
She looked incredible.
She did. I know some people are gonna call the line about, "Oh, you an Egyptian princess," like far too woke and too like pandery. I loved it. Or not Egyptian princess,
Hero.
sorry, Egyptian hero. They might not like it. I fucking loved it. I don't care that it was right on the fucking nose. It was brilliant.
I have a question that is
no, she's basically a brand new character.
I was gonna say, is she been made up for this?
So Layla has been made up. I'm literally googling. I was googling this before I mentioned it. Layla is basically a brand new character, but she becomes a loose adaptation and significant update of obscure Egyptian Marvel superhero, the Scarlet Scarab. So the superhero persona is based on someone who exists.
Okay. So it's kind of their adaptation.
But yeah, as with what Marvel like to do, they updated her.
Mm-hmm.
So the Scarlet Scarab was a man by the looks of it. Who kind of looks like they were supposed to be the Egyptian Captain America.
Okay.
Which makes the suit design for her make a lot more sense with the wings, because I'm pretty sure I said to Jenna actually, the way she was using the wings as a shield was very reminiscent of the Falcon becoming Captain America.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's cool.
I really liked her costume. I thought she looked fucking awesome.
I thought it was a really cool way to tie Tiamat in even more.
Yeah.
And the way that she was talking to her through the dead bodies was super creepy, but also really cool.
Because she's such like a cheerful character.
Yeah, it was so weird.
Dead body was a really fun contrast.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see then, because obviously they're not going to make that change without consulting Marvel themselves. And like the discussion being there that is this okay? So I now wonder if this is going to prompt Marvel to bring her out as an actual comic book like series, and kind of for that audience of an Egyptian female superhero.
Yeah. At the end of the day,
more representation is better.
Yeah. I've said this and I'll keep saying it because I genuinely believe it. Superheroes are literally for everyone. Mm-hmm. If there isn't a superhero that you can find relatable, then Marvel and DC are fucking up.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of superheroes that are out there, everyone should be able to have 1, 2, probably in reality 3 superheroes that they can look at and go, I can resonate with that on some level.
Exactly.
So the fact that lines like, "Are you an Egyptian superhero?" doesn't make everyone go, "What do you mean? There's loads of Egyptian superheroes." Shows that there's not enough representation.
Yeah, straight away I was just like, "Oh, that's perfect."
Yeah, and it was a really cute little girl that did it as well, which just made me happy. She's like, "Oh, now we get to have an Easter egg in 10 years' time where we find out the newest Egyptian taking over's her."
Avatar is, yeah.
Yeah, like how they changed it so the kid in Iron Man 2 is Peter Parker.
Yeah.
I'm like all for stuff like that. It's great.
I'm interested if they start, now that they've done that and it kind of went down very well. I wonder if in season 2, like, we find, or we're introduced to more of these avatars that actually have more of a kind of their own suit and powers or whatever. Maybe they'll start like introducing new avatars into like the Moon Knight kind of circle of characters.
Do you get what you're saying? Here's my thing with why that doesn't make a lot of sense based on what information we have. And don't get me wrong, this isn't like a deal breaker. It's something they just need to be aware of. The other avatars, that when like they had the gods speaking through them, made it very clear they want to act in secret and just guide humanity. Whereas Khonshu's a spoiled brat who's like, no, I'm going to be proactive, blah 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 blah. Which is why his avatar is like out there fighting crime. They would need to not use any of the gods we've already seen or heard about having avatars, and almost like use Moon Knight and Mark Spector and what they were able to do as like an inspiration for gods like Tawret to go, my avatar could actively help the world, so I'm going to let them. But like I said, it's not an issue per se, but if they don't address that in the story, it looks weird.
Yeah, I just wonder if in the next,
I think it opens the door.
Because like the gods now have seen, they weren't believing that Harrow was going to release why am I blanking on her name? The evil god. I can't think. But they didn't believe in that. That's why they're like, we're not getting involved. That's obviously not going to happen. Like, we can just sit back and watch. I wonder if the events that happened have like might have shifted that perspective a bit of like they're more willing to allow their avatars to be more influential.
Or maybe when a Khonshu or Tawret comes to them and goes, I'm worried about this, they then tell their avatars to go investigate or whatever. But there's definitely options. Overall, although I bitched and moaned about bits of the finale, overall I think it is one of the better finales we've had.
Yeah, I think. I also think the two other points that we were worried about them trying to fit and wrap up, I think they did in a really good way.
Yep. My